Hello and welcome to A Gay Old Time. My name is Nigel May. You may know me from things I've presented on the TV. You may know me as a host from my radio shows, or you may have read one of my novels. You may not know me at all, and that's just fine. But anyone who does know me will know that I am very proud to be a gay man and hugely proud to be part of a beautiful queer community. This podcast is a celebration of that community, of its many beautiful people, people of all ages, people who have fought with their emotions and who have faced struggles and emerged victorious, who have had to tread their own path in life to live their real truth. People who inspire, who aspire, and who always entertain. People who matter. Each episode, I'll speak to a person from our LGBTQIA+ rainbow, discuss their journey and their thoughts on our rich and varied queer community. One person, one life, one conversation, and I can guarantee a gay old time. My guest today is Rod Thomas, probably better known by his pop star name, Bright Light, Bright Light. Rod has been releasing excellent pop music since 2012 and always shines as an example of how to continually strive forwards with their artistry and music despite the restrictions of being an independent artist. Born and raised in Wales, Rod now lives in New York, which is where he feels most at home. His talent has seen him touring with Cher, with the Scissor Sisters, and recording songs with one of his childhood heroes, Elton John. He has recorded 5 studio albums, and his name comes from the movie Gremlins, as if you didn't already know. Bright Light, welcome to A Gay Old Time.
Hello.
How are you, Rod?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad at all, thank you. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today. There is so much to talk about with you, because I think you inspire on so many levels, but I want to go right back to the beginning, to a little Rod, growing up in a little village near Neath in Wales. Paint a little picture of what you were like, Rod, as a little child. Were you aware of, being different to other people around you?
I was an only child, and I lived really in the middle of nowhere. I wasn't even in a village. So it was a kind of odd experience because you don't really have that much context at that point, So I would finish school and I would go home and it would be me and my parents. So there was no real gauge of what I was like as a kid. At home, I kind of had friends in school that would be playing with other kids in the street after school, and I didn't have that. So I didn't really know what I was like really in relation to other kids outside of school. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of an odd situation to have where you only really see yourself with friends in like a school context or maybe like on weekends or something like that. So my evenings, I didn't really think about myself in relation to a world. It was just, I don't know. It took a while before I thought about stuff like that.
Were you happy in your own company as a child?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I don't remember not being. I don't remember thinking about it really that much at all. I know that I used, like TV and film and radio a lot. I loved them because I thought they were so cool and they were this insight into a world that didn't really exist where I lived. So I was very fascinated by TV and music and film.
So what were the sort of posters on the wall of your bedroom, and what sort of TV shows did you watch? Did you have like childhood heroes and things like that?
There was obviously the nonsense that was on British TV, so whatever things were syndicated at the time, like 2.4 Children or whatever was a big one. The Upper Hand, Honor Blackman, fabulous. I loved pop music, so I would buy CD singles or cassette singles, and whatever posters they would come with would be on the wall, like a Gina G or a sort of Bjork poster or that kind of thing. I loved Nintendo, so I had like a Nintendo and was playing Mario and stuff like that. Colorful things, I think I was very drawn to, just because the world was so calm around me. In the valleys, it was very green and very pretty, but so quiet that I loved the neon colors and like the wild worlds of like the Dubstar artwork or a Nintendo graphic design or something like that. It felt a little bit more intricate and fun versus the tranquil scenery around, if that makes sense.
What were you like at school? Were you a good student?
Yeah, I think it was a swat, really. Yeah, I don't know. I was really annoying. I think it's weird. Like, I've always been really good at school, always got really good grades. I think I'm just very, very good at remembering things that I have to. I have a photographic memory, which I didn't think I understood until I was doing my A-levels. But the way that I could remember things for exams was I would draw little bubble diagrams of stuff, and I would write information and use different colors to highlight different things that I could remember, and it absolutely worked for me. Like, I have this wild ability to remember photographs and images and things like that, less so with names and pertinent information, but if I can put something on a page and look at it, I can remember it.
That's a great skill. Immediately when you say that, I know you're a bit of a film buff, Rod, so I'm thinking you'll probably get this this reference. You reminded me then of Barbara Windsor in Carry On Spying, because she's got the photographic memory. She just sort of like closes her eyes and winks or blinks, and immediately she remembers everything.
Well, probably not the first time I've been compared to her. Yeah, like it's funny. I think maybe that's why I'm so drawn to film and to images and posters and graphic design, is that it's always been such a big part of my subconscious. You know, like I remember things like the single covers and the box art design for Nintendo games, I think, because it was just so much more stand out than the world that was around me. I've always been drawn to like colors and shapes and textures and things. Like I remember I wanted to cover my like books in tin foil as a child in school and like use projector pens to write on them because I liked the texture that it made and like the indentations and stuff. Like it's so wild, like so weird. Yeah, my visual brain has always been a lot more active than my academic brain, but I somehow found a way to marry the two.
Well, that creativity was obviously there from an early age. Can I ask you about, any sort of feeling of otherness, of being aware that maybe you weren't, the sexuality that convention deemed you or said that you should be? Do you remember your first sort of feelings of what we now come to realise was sexuality?
Yeah, I think that's always been there. I think but again, not realising that it wasn't normal or that it wasn't what everyone felt, like being drawn to kids' cartoons, like the male characters were very sexualized. Thundercats, they like men or male characters, and even Chitara, where like the clothes were like really tight on her boobs, and on the male characters, it was like small hot pants that these guys were wearing and like ripped bodies. It's kind of wild how sexualized those were. You saw them all the time, so your brain definitely gravitated towards it. But I just assumed that everyone was as intrigued in those things as I was. Not that I thought about it as like a sexual thing. I just thought that everyone was drawn to those body types or things, And then you kind of realize that like over time, I remember like a friend in school talked about like having an erection thinking about a girl, and I was like, oh, I have never had that thinking about a girl. And that was the first moment where I was like, oh, right, okay, maybe that's not the same then.
And so what age were you at that point, Rod?
12? 11? No, 11? 10? 11? I don't know, something like that. But again, I wasn't quite sure like what it meant. I just realized that I hadn't had that, and I was like, right, okay, but what is, and then you kind of like, no, and then moving on. And then, it kind of gradually happened because like the gay people, quote unquote, that you knew in media, I didn't feel anything like, like I don't even remember who was out at that time, honestly, but people like Paula Grady or Andy Bell or whatever, like they were a very different type of person. They were such strong characters, and they were so outrageous and so fun and so confident and so camp and over the top that they almost didn't feel like, they felt like characters versus people. And so I was like, well, I'm not like that. And then when you had like even like Elton John or Pet Shop Boys, who I don't think were actively out at that point, I didn't feel anything like them either. And then you'd maybe have like a gay character in a film, but that was again a stereotype, like Hollywood and Mannequin. I was nothing like that. So there was no point of reference. I remember the same year actually in school, one of my friends, Haley, was talking about Katie Lang in the schoolyard when Constant Craving was a hit, saying she was a lesbian. I was like, what does that mean? She was like, oh, it's a woman that fancies a woman. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of someone just talking about that before. And that was a kid who knew that, and she wasn't saying it in like a slur. She just sort of said it as a fact. And it was like, oh, right, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Just a very odd. I think a lot of British people had a very odd relationship with sexuality at that point, because until Queer as Folk, there was nothing which made it seem like it was very common for people to be attracted to the same sex. You know, like that it was not just like a freak phenomenon. It then, Queer as Folk made you feel like, oh wow, there's like a lot of people like me out there, you know?
So when you had that conversation with the lad about the erection and you sort of said, oh, was that an O of, oh, I must be different? Or was that an O almost of foreboding, thinking, okay, I'm not like him?
It was neither at the time. It was just like I don't think I really understood it at the time. And I didn't really think about it for a long time after that.
So did you do that thing of having like, best female friends with that class? I mean, I was that queer kid that literally, I think, looking back, all the signs were there with the toys that I played with, the people, the friends that I hang out with. It was mainly girls. It's like everybody else was playing war. I was doing the hopscotch thing. Were you that young queer kid as well?
I had like a couple of male friends in school, but I was much closer to the girls, I think. And I would spend more time with them in the playground. I wouldn't be playing football with the boys. I'd just be like hanging out with it was like me and one or two other weird boys that would be talking about pop songs or like indie bands or things like that, talking about like, Sleeper and Everything But the Girl, or like Dubstar or Alanis or something like that. And then the other boys would be playing football, and I just wasn't interested. It wasn't my world. I didn't feel part of that. I didn't feel at all connected to that kind of social world. So we would just kind of sit down and talk about things that we liked in pop culture, which I thought was like much more interesting, to me. And like, obviously now you realize that that's kind of a lot more queer coded, but at the time it just felt like, oh, we just don't like playing sports.
What about dating? I mean, when did dating come into your life? And when it did, was it girls? Was it boys? Was it confusion?
Very confused. I mean, there were a few like girlfriends that, were very PG, basically. The first guy was probably like 17 or something like that. And, they weren't like long-term boyfriends, but that was like sort of messing around and stuff. And that felt a bit more real. But that was also kind of scary because in Wales at that period of time, it was really not okay. Even though we had lots of gay bars that we used to go to, Britain, especially where I'm from, was not accepting of gay people at the time. Like, it was not a lot of people sort of romanticize periods of time and like how much more exciting it was to go out at a certain period of time. And there were places that were a lot more fun, but I definitely don't miss going out with a fear of being caught, like that was like pretty horrendous.
So did you try to hide it then with the dating? I mean, was it literally sneaking out the back door and then sneaking in under cover of dark and hoping nobody would actually ask any questions?
Well, it was just sort of saying I was going out with friends, but not really where. Because again, like I lived in the middle of nowhere, so I had to drive. And it would be me driving, myself would be in the designated driver, because we all kind of lived all over the place, and I'd pick us all up and we'd go out. And, it was just a wild time. I really don't fondly look back on that part of my life, might we say.
Do you feel that you carried like shame of being gay and thinking you were gay? Because I know, personally speaking, my mum was quite religious, so I knew that when I was going to tell her that I was gay, even though she ended up asking me in the end, it was, I felt very shameful about it. I was a bit like, oh, I've let my mother down. Was there a feeling for you at any stage in that early sort of formative years of your homosexuality of thinking, okay, this is not what my parents are going to want. This is not what my family expected. So I'm going to try and hide it. And that sense of shame was always there for you.
Shame, no. Fear, yes. I think there was definitely like my parents will feel let down, but I didn't feel ashamed because I didn't feel like I'd done anything wrong. I just felt scared that it would be met with a certain type of reaction. I felt like, in a way, I'm kind of proud of myself because I was do you know what? I get straight A's. There is absolutely nothing you can do to say that I'm like an embarrassment as a child. Like I was excelling at school and I was really, really good at a lot of traditional things like getting grades, getting offers from universities, doing a GCSE a year early and getting an A star for that. Like I knew that like if you looked at what like a quote unquote model child would be, that I ticked a lot of those boxes. So I didn't feel ashamed of sort of my sexuality, but I was still very aware that that was probably going to be more important to a lot of people than anything else you achieved, which would make you like a good kid kind of thing. So yeah, it was weird. It wasn't shame. It was just sort of foreboding dread, I think.
You mentioned earlier that you were obviously going out to gay clubs and stuff. What was your first experience like in a gay club, in a safe space? Did you feel immediately like, yes, this is where I want to be?
No, I think the first time I went, I was really scared because it was just so real. Like, not surreal, so real. That like before it was just like this idea that there could be people sort of like you, and then when you see it, it's kind of overwhelming, and you feel like, oh wow, okay, well, it's not just it's something I've got to like accept as part of my life now because it does exist and I've been here, you know. I remember being very scared that like someone would recognize me or see me there and it would somehow get back to whoever I was like not wanting to know. But it became a lot more fun, and just sort of having that as a real option was kind of amazing. Even in Swansea, I think there were like 7 gay bars at the time, and it was just so fascinating to sort of see like, wow, there's this whole world, and if we're like apparently gross and like everyone hates us, that there were still so many spaces for it back in the day. You know, it was like a really odd dual reality.
When did you feel in life that you kind of found your tribe, as it were? I mean, was that in those times when you did go into, queer safe spaces for the first time?
So I did like a drama group in the summer, and I met this amazing woman called Heather, who is still a really good friend of mine. She lives back in Swansea now, actually. We became really, really good friends when we were like 15 in that drama group, and we used to hang out all the time. And it was like a completely different non-school, non-that world group of friends for me. And she really taught me a lot about being a lot more confident in yourself and just sort of trying really hard, pushing outside the boxes and doing everything. And she went to sixth form college a year earlier than I did. And she met this amazing group of friends who, like, you know, we all kind of came out one by one. And I was the last person to, I think. But without her, I don't know where I would be, truthfully. I think she kind of saved all of our lives. When I was watching It's a Sin, the Jill character, was that her name, Jill, the female friend? That was Heather for us. I post about her like maybe every coming out day on Facebook, that like we all owe her so much. You know, like without her, I don't know how we all would have fared where we're from. And we definitely wouldn't all have met each other. So that was definitely like a finding a tribe moment. And it was like life-changing.
So it sounds like Heather was the lady that gave you confidence. Did that confidence grow and, you know, snowball when you left Wales to go to Warwick University? It didn't.
No, I have had a very turbulent ride of confidence, I think, throughout my life. I don't think I felt confident until I moved to New York. I really don't think that I felt confident at all in myself until I moved to New York. I hated university. Hated my 3 years at university. I actually moved in with Heather in London after it, and that was amazing. But I was the least confident in a house full of very confident people. And throughout the years, there were moments of, you know, I didn't not enjoy life, but there were moments of feeling more confident. There were moments of like success and feeling like, oh, wow, that went really well or whatever. But it was very up and down. And I don't think I felt accepted for who I was in London. I feel like I went from feeling confident to being the SWAT again in a way, because very specifically remember, and I have no judgment of people who do drugs, recreational drugs, as a very big disclaimer, but I was very, very much looked down on for not being one of the people that did. I don't do drugs. I'm not interested. I don't care about them. They don't do anything for me. Not interested at all. But I remember the looks that DJs would give me when I was DJing in London for being the one that didn't do drugs. And it just like, I didn't understand why I was the uncool person for not doing them when I was in the same venue as everybody else until the same time, having as much fun. And I was just looked down on for being like the square. And I felt like I was right back in school again and was immediately not cool enough. I couldn't equate those things where it's like, so I'm DJing in the club that you're dancing at, but I'm not cool enough because I'm not getting as messed up as other people. I just didn't see why that was necessary. And it was the same feeling as like, yes, you're getting straight A's, but you're also gay, so you're not good enough there. It was just like a weird thing which stopped me feeling good about myself and stopped me feeling confident. And I always felt like on the sidelines. I don't think I ever really felt good about myself in London. On another level, you know, I was making pop music. And when I started doing that as Bright Light, I was getting really good reviews, but I was the only person in my friendship group that didn't get signed to a major label. I watched every single other person I was close to get signed for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I was the runt that was left on the side, which again felt like the school thing of like, you know, being picked last at sports, but I just never got picked. My whole time in London was this gigantic headfuck of not feeling confident and or not being allowed to feel confident in myself. And it was just so much that like when I moved to New York is the first time in my entire life that I felt like I could hand on heart say like I feel really confident and really proud of myself and that I actually believe in myself. Before that, I don't think I ever really believed in myself.
Was that the same for your confidence in your own sexuality as well?
I think it was just all encompassing. Sexuality, no. Romance, probably yes. But yeah, I don't think I had confidence in myself as a human being until 2013, which is a really long time.
Because it's crazy to listen to that, because from the outside, I mean, when I think about Bright Light in my life, I mean, you are now sort of 5 albums in, 5 studio albums in, and I kind of think, yeah, Bright Light's music has always been there to me, and I've always, you know, if somebody said to me, like, describe Bright Light, I would say, oh yeah, really a confident, queer, forward-thinking, brilliant trailblazer of a pop artist. But surely, like, having an album out there, did that not bring any kind of confidence boost at all?
Yes, to a point, but then it was also surrounded by rejections from every single record label or publisher that I spoke to. So it was like just deemed like not good enough, you know? And I remember a record label person at the time just saying like, well, why did you bother putting it out? Why didn't you wait to be signed? And I was like, because no one was signing me and I didn't want to let it go to waste. I just felt so looked down on. You know, I felt like every single person in the UK industry was just looking down on me like I was a piece of shit. I felt like it didn't matter what I achieved with the music, you know, they just didn't care. They didn't want me to succeed. I felt like they wanted me to just disappear and not be there. That feeling kind of hasn't really gone away, but I don't live there anymore and I don't have to live by it anymore. But, you know, I just felt very unwanted by the industry. And so it was very hard to enjoy the success of my first album. Listen, I got really good reviews. I got 4 stars in Q, which is how Elton really started to care about the records. But the industry itself still didn't want me around and still didn't care about me and still didn't want to know about supporting me or helping me do it. So no, it really didn't make me feel confident. It's that wild thing of like other side of the window where, you know, you can see people what you deem to be success or a happy relationship or a happy home or a good career or whatever, but you don't see what goes on behind that window where it's like you're really struggling to like hold the wall up. And yeah, it didn't make me feel confident. It made me feel less confident that I could have achieved all of that without. And like one of my friends was signed for like £500,000 for a major label for their first album. I had £4,500 to make mine, and I had to compete with them, and I was looked down on because I couldn't achieve things that they did. And I'm like, well, they have 100 times my budget, so how on earth can I do that? My entire career has been fucking Rumpelstiltskin, like making gold out of straw, you know? The only budget that I've had available to me in my entire career has been what's in my bank account, and it hasn't been £500,000. So, you know, I feel like I do it because I love it, and that's been really fun. And I'm very proud of the things that I've achieved. But I've definitely been aware of like a ceiling that has been unsmashable, where like there really is a point, like anyone that is doing an independent business, whether that's like a bakery, a school, a music project, a film project, whether they're a charity and they're trying to do stuff, there is a very, very tangible limit to what you can achieve. And it's really hard to see that and know that you just don't have the ability to break through that, you know? And all of that fed into my self-confidence. And I had no self-worth, I think. Or I felt that I was worth something, but I felt like nobody else does. And that was a really hard thing to grapple with for like a decade.
I mean, those friends that are saying to you, or those people that were saying to you, well, you're not as good as us because you're £4,500 and we're 50, £500,000.
They didn't say that they weren't, that I wasn't as good as them. But I knew that like I didn't have the ability to sort of stand next to them, even though I was in rooms with them absolutely all the time. I was always the one friend that was just like not of interest to the industry itself. So there were times where they would be talking about budgets or talking about what they were going to do next. And I didn't have access to that, And I remember one friend said like, he was joking. Oh my God, he was joking, but it was just so gross. He was like, you make your little albums, blah, 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 blah. And it just really fucked me up so much. That's just what I thought the industry thought about me. And it was a flippant comment that was clearly a joke, but it was so close to home that it really fucked me up. And like that feeling made me leave the country. I moved over an ocean, which is absurd, but I moved here. And the first week that I met people here, they were like, oh, you do this kind of music. Oh, my friend does this. Why don't you meet them? Why don't you? And immediately doors were like open and like, come and join us, come and do this. And I'm like, wow, I didn't have that in an entire decade in London. All the people that were signed to labels were friends with me, but they definitely didn't like welcome me into their fold and like try and help me. They were very fine with me not being able to succeed.
So why New York? Was that somewhere you'd been already and fell in love with? Or was it literally a case of like, no, I'm going to New York?
It was just a place that I felt really good about myself. And I really enjoyed the city and the architecture and the people making music that I'd met here before. Just had a very different energy and I really liked it. So I thought like, why not? Let's just try it for a couple of months. And I've never left.
So those first couple of months obviously were like bedding in. When did you feel that, no, this is the place for me? This is, my international tribe, if you like.
Day 3, waking up in the morning, not feeling shit about myself, getting a message from somebody saying, let's have coffee, feeling like someone was interested in me, just for no reason and no benefit. Like, I don't know, it was like just this massive weight just like taken off me. I'd never felt that alive in my entire life. And it was like so liberating. I've never felt that alive. And I realized that like I didn't think about London once, which is mad. I didn't think about it at all. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sad.
So you arrive in New York, you're one album in at that point, you get to day 3 and you feel, yes, I've done the right thing, this is what I need to do. So tell me about the journey from there on then. So for album 2 and your feelings, your confidence, was album 2 a happier album for you maybe in some ways because it felt like the beginning of a brand new chapter?
Yeah, it was definitely a happier album. It was a lot more optimistic. So it was called Life is Easy, just as a kind of tongue-in-cheek title, to feeling like, wow, I never thought that I could make any of these things that have happened happen. And I did. And it was just sort of refreshing to feel like, oh, wow, I made a change and it worked. And, it's accentuated by all these other people around it. But I wanted to enjoy the fact that for the first time in my life, I actually felt really good about myself. And life did feel amazing. Like 2013 until 2016, I think, was like a real period where things felt really fantastic. And it was just nice to work that into the album that I was making as well. It felt like really warm and really loving, and I felt really good about myself.
You mentioned Mr. John earlier, Elton John. You said that he was aware of your music, obviously, from the first album. I think one of the most amazing moments in your Technicolor amazing life from the outside was your moment on Graham Norton, the only unsigned artist I think ever to perform on Graham Norton, alongside Elton John, of course, for All in the Name. How did that come to be? How did you and Elton finally end up sort of recording together? Because you supported him as well, didn't you, on tour?
Yeah, well, I recorded the first song with him on the second album, I Wish We Were Leaving, and I was living in New York. I flew to Atlanta to record with him there, which was completely amazing. And as we were sat in his kitchen, after we'd recorded the song, he phoned his manager and he said, "Oh, Rod's opening for me on tour in July." And he looked at me and was like, "Oh, do you want to?" And I was like, which was just absolutely crazy. And so I spent that whole next year and a half opening for him across the world, which was just, lots of artists have the ability to do that for up and coming musicians, and they don't. And the fact that he did was just incredible. So after that whole period, we were like super good friends, and we still are, but we were, talking about music and stuff. And I played him the demo for All in the Name. And I was like, "Would you sing on this with me?" So he said, yes. So then I flew to LA where he was at the time, went into the studio. I think it's the one that Gaga did the Fame Monster in, did the vocals there. And we were talking about the album campaign. And I asked him if he would go on Graham Norton with me. And he said, yes. That's the reason I got the show, is because he could come with me. Like, that's the reason they took a chance on me. And he knew that. And he did that. And that was absolutely amazing of him to do that. And we had a blast. It was the only time we've got to like perform live together. But it was just magic. I never thought that I would get to do that.
Well, that must have been a moment for your gorgeous gay heart there, because, when you were little Rod back in Wales, you were saying that people like Elton John were the people that you looked at on TV as maybe a person of similarity to how you were feeling. And then there you are on one of the biggest TV shows in the UK performing alongside Elton John. I mean, that must have been, a pinch me moment. Watching that performance back on YouTube, I think there's a moment when you moved to the back of the stage and Elton sat at the front, and I can just imagine you must have been thinking, that's Elton John. I'm on Graham Norton with Elton John.
It was, yeah, there were so many thoughts that day in my brain. It was really overwhelming and fantastic and scary. The other guest was so famous, and I was very, there were moments, it wasn't like shame or fear, really. It was just like recognizing the difference between me and the other people. I was wearing like a $50 assembled suit and everyone else looked like $1 million, and I was like, wow, I'm really the like cheapest slag that they've had on the show in their career. And I kind of loved that. I thought that was so fun. And he always laughs at me, like the things that I wear and the stuff, and not that he's like the most subtle, but he sort of said to me once, like we were sat down somewhere, and he was like, "Oh, you don't give a shit, do you?" I was like, "Oh no, I do." No. He went, "No, in a really good way. Like, you just do things that make you happy and you don't give a shit. That's really cool." And I'd never thought about that. And it was the first time, sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional. It was the first time, like, compared to other people in the industry who made me feel really cheap, that I was allowed to sort of like celebrate the fact that I don't have the budget and I don't have the support and network and machine behind me that other people do. And it was just nice for someone to finally tell me, like, "Oh, well, the way that you do it is really cool." Not like, "Well, you're the also ran," And that was game changing. And that was like just after I'd moved to New York. So I already felt like a little bit better about myself, but just like finally not being made to feel like the kind of piece of shit that was like also in the room was just very, very liberating.
If I was in the room with you right now, I would give you the biggest hug, Rod Thomas, let me tell you. You were in New York. Obviously, musically, things were on the up, which is brilliant, confidence-wise. There you are, performing alongside Elton John. You supported, was it Scissor Sisters? Was that the tour at that point as well? I know you supported them as well. Was that in your early years of New York?
Just before I moved to New York.
That was just before. Yeah. So yes. Things were on and up on that level as far as confidence was concerned. What about you with your sexuality? Moving to New York, a different scene, a fabulous queer scene, a very rich and varied, beautiful queer scene. Did you immerse yourself in that straight away?
Yeah, I just went out all the time. It was really fun. Yeah, I was just out like absolutely all the time, like going out to like 5 o'clock on a Tuesday for no reason. Or like going for drinks with a random guy at like 3 o'clock on a Wednesday. The nice thing was, at that point when I first moved there, I was off album cycle and I was just writing. So it was just really like giving myself, I said 3 months to enjoy New York over the summer up until the summer before I had a few festivals, and just write and see what happened. So there was no time constraint. There was no anything really. And I just got to be there and like meet people, make music and just see what happened. And it was fab. It was a really incredible time just going there and like meeting people and people that just didn't know anything about me. You know, in London, if you've lived there for 9 years, everyone, you know someone that knows somebody. So like everyone's kind of intertwined. And it was really refreshing to just be in a city where you didn't know everyone by proxy. It was really cool to just be able to meet people with no backstory and no, you know, oh, they used to go out with my boyfriend or whatever.
It seems to me that obviously back in the UK, there was a feeling of you were almost being judged by other people in your opinion for, you know, not doing as well or not being, you know, the cool kid on the block or whatever it may be. It feels like in New York, immediately, you didn't have to be cool. You didn't care about what other people thought about you. It was just you living your true life. Would you say that that was the moment that you became comfortable in your own skin?
New York is a major city, so obviously there's its own biases and prejudices and judgment and blah, 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 blah. But I wasn't reliant going out at night to a show and just seeing the same A&R people that had just like looked down at me the week before. It was just nice to not have that like reminder that I'm deemed like a insignificant artist. You know, I was just going out and meeting musicians organically or through other friends that were interested and were like up for collaborating. And I found this like network of musicians to swap and change. Like they'd sing for me, I'd sing for them, or I'd produce a song for them or do whatever. And it felt like that's how music should work. And I felt like the entire time in London had felt like a bit of a missed opportunity, really, because I was so preoccupied by rejection that I didn't really get to do as much fun stuff because I always felt on the back foot. Whereas it was the first time in my life in New York where I actually got to feel like I could enjoy whatever happened. And there was no, yeah, but you're not on a label. You know, like no one talked about it. No one cared. But in London, everyone was obsessed in 2012 about like what label you were signed to, who was your booking agent, who's your lawyer, who's your manager, you know, like nonsense things. But that's all anyone talked about. And it was exhausting to sort of have to like defend yourself every 5 minutes or like have to justify yourself every 5 minutes. I just didn't have to do that here. It was amazing.
You mentioned earlier that when you were back in the UK sort of clubbing and going out on the scene, you know, there was a feeling of like, oh, I don't fit in or I'm not deemed to be cool because I won't do drugs and, you know, yada, yada, yada. So when you got to New York, I mean, obviously it seems that, I mean, even devoid of like talking music or whatever, you going out on the scene, you felt yourself, you felt accepted almost.
I wouldn't say I felt accepted. I just felt not rejected. I felt like I had a clean slate. You know, a lot of the feelings of rejection in London is like internal as well as external, but you kind of internalize things that kind of fester and like help put you into that spot of lack of confidence. But it was just really nice in New York to just feel like there's no, just a clean slate is probably the easiest way to think about it. There's no prejudgment. There's no ghosts from the past coming back out. It just felt like nice to be able to do stuff on my own terms and just have a different playing field. So it was just liberating, and it helped me push out of my own mental blocks as well.
Here's a question. Is it different to date in New York as opposed to back here in the UK? When you started dating in New York, was it a different vibe? Did it feel different?
Only because I felt different about myself. I think, you know, any city I think is essentially the same. As many prejudices on the apps as there are anywhere else. There's as much, you know, rejection and sort of bravado as there is anywhere else. I don't think it's better or worse. It's just same shit, different catwalk kind of thing. It was just, for me, it was just like different pools of people. That was really it. And so that was like enough of a change that it helped me feel a little bit better about it.
When did Romy and Michelle's Saturday afternoon tea dance come along? Because I mean, that is now, you know, famous. It's it's legendary, quite frankly. This is a club night that you put on. At Club Cumming, Alan Cumming's club. So where did that come along? How did that happen?
Oh God, when did I start that? Like maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago. My friend opened a bar in Brooklyn, very close to where I used to live. He was doing the programming, and I said that I wanted to start like a tea dance because there's Sunday tea dances a lot in New York, and I wanted to do a Saturday one. So I just thought I'd do something stupid and do this Romy Michelle idea, and people really liked it, and it became really fun. And then I moved it to, I was doing it once or twice a month in Brooklyn and twice a month at Club Cumming when Alan opened the bar, and then it kind of migrated to just Alan's bar eventually. it's been so fun. It's a really nice way to like help build a little sense of community. You know, like the people make song requests on Post-it notes from the film. There's like a request wall. So I created that so that people would see what other songs other people were putting down, and it would start conversations naturally and organically versus trying to meet new people. So, and it has worked. People have made friends there, and they kind of formed little groups of friends that would come with each other. It's like a very no judgment space. You know, people are like from all walks of life and all different types of people. I'll play a bit of anything really, and we have different themes, but it was nice to sort of make my own party where you don't have to be a certain type of person, and it's a daytime party. So like people that work in nightlife can come, people with kids can still come, people with dogs can like bring a dog in with them, people who are like between shifts in work and maybe have an hour to kill can pop in and say hi. You know, it just felt like a really nice thing to do that was meeting people already in your sphere, about being able to listen to songs that you maybe wouldn't hear at like a nightclub in a public space.
For me, Rod, when I, talk to you and listen to you and think about Bright Light, I think there are so many fabulous things that you have done that will always be remembered in years to come. When you and I aren't even here anymore, there will be certain things that will be remembered. And one of them is the Channel 4 season Gay Britannia that was on to celebrate 50 years since the passing of the Sexual Offences Act. Now, you were very involved in that because you actually wrote the theme music for a TV show, Queers, didn't you, on BBC4? Now, how did that come to be? Because was that through Mark Gatiss?
It was, yes. So back in 2017, I won an award for my choreography album, or it might have been 2016. I forget if it was the year of release or the year after, from Wink magazine. And I won Musician of the Year and Mark won Man of the Year. So I'd never met him before. I was obviously huge fan of his work. League of Gentlemen was one of my favorite things. So Mark was there and I obviously wanted to speak to him. But, you're like trying to pick your moment kind of thing. And after the speeches, we'd all made speeches from winning. He sort of smiled and said, hello. And so I was like chatting to him a bit. And he was like, oh, so you live in London? And I was like, oh, no, actually, I live in New York. And he went, oh, I'm there next week. Do you want to get a coffee? And I said, yep, great, sure. So we exchanged email addresses. I thought like, oh, wow, how cool, that like somebody that I really liked that much was even going to entertain. So I was in the cab on the way home from the event and I opened my phone to write an email to him, and he'd already emailed me. He was like, let's definitely meet up next week in New York. And so we did. And he'd listened to my music at that point and asked if I would. He's like, do you make music for TV or anything? I said, yeah. And he was like, would you be interested in writing something for Queers? And so kind of improvised something at the piano and sent it to him. He was like, that's perfect. That's approved. And I was like, oh, wow. And we became really good friends. Like I love Mark so much. And we always hang out when I'm back in London. We'll go for like a lunch or a drink or something like that. He'll come to my shows. I'll go to see him and his husband do plays if I'm there when they're doing stuff. I love that man so much. He's like one of the absolute like golden treasures of the UK. What a dream man. So talented and so kind.
Now, I've got to mention another name as well, because I could not live with my gay old time life if I didn't mention one word, Cher. That's, like an icon to our queer community. You toured with Cher. Now, I'm sure, you weren't hanging out with Cher day and night, but A, what was it like when you got that phone call saying you're going to support Cher? And B, did you get to meet the lady herself and what was it like?
So I got an email from my booking agent at the time to saying, oh, we've had a tour come in. Can I call you about it? And I told her prior to that I wanted to take the year off touring because I wanted to just be in New York and work on the next record. I was like, Phyllis, I've told you, but like, fine, call me. And she was like, it's Cher. And I was like, what? What? Honestly, the last name in the entire world that I expected to hear, I very nearly turned it down. Which is so crazy, isn't it? Like, it's crazy. I nearly said no. Obviously, I really wanted to do it. I just thought like, oh, maybe it's not the right time. And very transparently, it costs a lot of money to do these tours. And I didn't think it was going to cover costs. And I really, really almost turned it down. And I did it. And it was just absolutely amazing, a phenomenal experience. playing to like that many gays in one night was just amazing. We had so much fun, and it was the first tour that I'd done without a live band, and it was just me, 2 dancers, backing track and visuals, and it felt so absolutely liberating. It was amazing to do it that way versus flying drum kits and keyboards and stuff around the world. And it really changed what I thought I could do with my live shows. It was so amazing. The audiences were incredible. It was really lovely to just take these guys from America on the road around Europe. And it was amazing. And I did meet Cher, and she's really lovely. She's like gorgeous, which is, I don't know, it's mind blowing to see someone like her in person, because she's such a enigma, you know, like Elton is as well, but she's also a film star, you know, just somebody that you've seen on TV forever. Maybe Elton less so as shocking, because you saw him on like chat shows and you would see him on British TV. So he felt like a little bit more real because he's like a British person. He would do cameos on like an Ab Fab or something like that. I don't think he was an Ab Fab, but you know what I mean? Like something like that. But with Cher, it's like she's this American idol that I just never thought was kind of like somebody that I would be in a room with. And it was absolutely mind-blowing.
There you were, supporting her, the Cher. It's fabulous. Let's talk about your music, because one of the things that I love about your music is the fact that you choose to represent our queer community so incredibly well, both through your, you know, your lyrics and also through your videos, through your visuals as well. I want to talk about 2 songs in particular, if I may. The first one is This Was My House, because, I mean, that was definitely, you know, a shout out to our safe spaces. And the second one is Saying Goodbye Is Exhausting, which you recorded with Justin Vivian Bond to raise money for Trans Awareness Week and for World AIDS Day. I mean, just respect for doing that in the first place. But how important is it for you to represent with your artistry?
It's essential to me. I mean, I don't really see what the point of my music is unless it's doing something in the world. Yes, I'm making pop music, but like belong to a community and I care. Like everything I do is because I want it to connect with somebody. So the Romy and Michelle tea dance parties are because I want to nurture a little community that doesn't already exist. Or maybe if it does, it's fragmented, and I want to help people like lonely souls or like people who've just moved to the city. I want to help them to find new friends. I'm a gay man, and I think gay men owe a world of gratitude to women and to trans women. And I want to make sure that people are very aware of that when they listen to my music, that I'm not existing as this like privileged white man that doesn't acknowledge my relationship to the rest of the world. There's a lot of people that do that. And I think it's just, you know, I have done everything independently, and I appreciate every single person that has done something kind to me to help me succeed in my career. And I think that has made me acutely aware of the power of kindness and amplification. I just want to play it forward. You know, I don't want to do anything without my community in tow. I don't want to do something that is just for my own personal benefit. That's not interesting to me. You know, if I wanted to do that, I'd go and work in a bank and buy a house. But I make music. Music is not made to be listened to just in your own brain. It's something that you make public so that it ideally connects to somebody else around you. You know, like that's the whole point. Like, you don't make a film for no one to watch it. You want it to connect to people, and you want it to inspire people or to reflect something that maybe they've thought about but never been able to verbalize, or maybe they've never thought about it. And it kind of, you have the ability to let people dream, or to let people's dreams become a little bit more part of their everyday life. And that's a huge gift. And I really want to use my platform to do that, and like, you know, reflect things that are positive and also reflect things that are sad, and give people maybe like a bit of release if something has happened, that they are not the only person that's felt like that, or that they could feel like that if it's something more positive. I don't know, you know, that my music is really not just about me in this room or in the studio making music. It's about the bigger picture.
Because with This Was My House, I mean, that was, you mentioned earlier about Swansea. You said it had 7 like gay bars back in the day. Now they're all shut down. It seems that that song was definitely a shout out to all of those safe spaces that just seem to be sadly disappearing for whatever reason. When you release a song like that and make the message, there must be a real sense of pride for you that it's not just, you're not just putting out a bop and it's like, oh, he loves me and I love him. It's actually, there's quite often a message behind it that comes from the heart.
I mean, I'm very proud of that song. I don't think 95% of the people that listen to it care what the lyrics mean, really. They just want to have a dance. But it is important to me that it is about something, and it is important to me that it has like a bit of a heart and soul and a message. Yeah, for sure. What
do you think of the state of our scene now? And the scene in New York obviously is the scene that I assume you frequent most. Is it dwindling there as well, or is it still, thriving?
No, it's not dwindling. There are so many queer spaces in New York. There's, oh my God, I mean, there's so many different neighborhoods, as you know, and they've all got multiple queer spaces. Like in the East Village, I think there's like 5 just within like a 10-minute walk of my house. And then you've got Chelsea, and you've got Hell's Kitchen, and you've got like the Upper East and West Sides, which have like a bar or 2. And then there's Brooklyn, like in Williamsburg, there's like 3 still within like a 2-block radius of each other. So they didn't close down in the way that they did in London, which I always found that shocking. Like when the Joiners and the Nelson's Head closed within a few months of each other or a few years of each other, that was a real blow, I thought, because that was a really nice little sort of trifecta of queer space. It's weird. Like the landscape hasn't changed as much in New York as it has in somewhere like London. I can't speak for the queer scene in London because I don't live there anymore. I haven't lived there since 2013, so I don't know the places that have opened up or the parties that have opened up, But it doesn't feel dwindling in New York, that's for sure. It feels like very present. And there's always something new popping up, even if it's just like a new event space. There's always something popping up.
Do you feel now that, I mean, you mentioned earlier that you're 41 now. Do you feel that you are more confident, more at ease, more yourself with your sexuality and your general gayness, for a phrase, than ever before?
I think so, yes. I think there's a point in your life where you either let go of anything, of any kind of like anxiety or
baggage.
Yeah, let's just go with baggage. You either let go of baggage or you don't. And I just have. I think there's a point where it's like, what's the point of not just being honest with like things that make you tick and things that make you happy? Like what's the point? We've all seen, oh my God, endless numbers of gay films where it's a person looking back on their life and they wish they'd done this, or it's full of regret and it's wistful and it's sad. Like I don't want that to be my story, and I refuse for that to be my story. So I don't really see the point in, letting myself be who I am, really.
I think that makes perfect sense. Let's have some fun to end the podcast. You can hold a fabulous dinner party and you can have 5 guests there, LGBTQ or otherwise, dead or alive, and make them famous so we know who they are. Who would you pick and why?
Sylvester, because I don't think enough people know his bodies of work these days. And he was just such a pioneer and such an absolute like mega force when it came to music. Oh, Catherine O'Hara, because I think she's just an amazing actor, and everything she's done from her like TV days to like Waiting for Guffman, Beetlejuice, and obviously Schitt's Creek. I would love her to be there. Oh God, let's go with, I'm looking around for George Michael, who you can see behind me. Got my framed George Michael things, absolutely iconic. What an amazing man. Just like the fact that he did so much philanthropy and no one knew until he died is just completely amazing. I cried my heart out the day that he died.
Did you get to meet him?
No, I never met him. I know, it's tragic. It's really, really tragic. Grace Jones, because she's just a complete whirlwind of a person and really one of my other favorite creatures in the world, like an absolute icon. My mind, I can't think of a 5th person.
We'll leave the space free and then see if George or Grace brings somebody along with them. You never know.
Yeah, give them a +1.
Exactly. And then that'll take up the empty seat. What's the best experience that you've ever had, Rod, in an LGBTQIA plus safe space?
Oh, God.
By best, it can be most memorable for whatever reason.
Oh, right. So back in the day, Ghetto was this club in London. Me and my friends went out. We used to go there. My God, no judgment, please. But we used to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday nights to Ghetto. But we used to go out the other nights as well. I was a receptionist at that point. We got the night bus home at 4:00. I got up at 7:00 and went to work every single day. Don't know how we did that. That's the power of being 21. So one night we were at Ghetto, and it was when Kelly Clarkson's Since You've Been Gone had come out, which is the most dramatic pop song in the world. And, you know, it made people feral with like how much they would sing along to the song. And there was one night, there's a photo of it I've got somewhere in my flat in London, or my old flat in London. My friend Heather, actually same Heather from earlier, screaming with like her hands like that. You can see down the camera. A woman to the right of us grabbed the fan, like the stand-up fan, put it in her face and used it as a wind machine. Another woman threw her drink at the wall so that she had nothing in her hands inhibiting her performing the song. Someone was pounding the floor with their fists. Everyone was screaming Since You've Been Gone. And it was like the most wild moment where the entire room was screaming the chorus. I've never been in a room where anyone has done that to another song. It was like wild, like watching the woman throw her drink at the wall. It was so funny. It's the most fun I've ever had in 3.5 minutes at a club.
I'm loving that. Feral yet fabulous, wild yet wonderful.
Absolutely unhinged, feral, like wild, bestial.
So you're in an LGBTQIA plus club. What song is guaranteed to get bright light on the dance floor?
Ooh, just a little bit, Ginny G.
I know why, but I've got to ask you.
Because it's the campus thing in the whole world. But it has to be the Eurovision edit. I don't want any of that shit where the song fades out. I want the Eurovision hard end edit. Just a little bit. Boom. Majestic. Absolutely incredible.
See, there's a question I've got to ask you now, because you mentioned the E word, Eurovision. Would you consider doing Eurovision?
Yes.
See, I think as a lifetime Eurovision fan, I think you would be superb.
I would consider doing it. I would rather write the song than actually go and perform it. But there are definitely moments where I'm like, it would be so much fun to go and perform on that stage. The sort of caveat would be doing it for the UK, where there's a lot of like, you know, snide response to UK acts. But yeah, it's absolutely not out of the question. I'm not famous enough for them to ask me. So it's never going to happen.
Rod Thomas, I tell you, I'm going to make that happen. Have you ever done the gay holiday? And if so, what was it good? Did you enjoy it and did you repeat it?
I went to Gran Canaria with a group of friends. It was absolutely horrendous because the couple that we were going on the trip with broke up 2 weeks before. Both decided to still come. Gigantic dramas. One of them ended up sleeping with 2 other people from the friendship group. Having to go out. It was so explosive and so horrendous. We were there for 2 weeks. It was absolutely horrendous. Apart from I did meet one of my best friends in the world in a club at the Yumbo Centre, this guy, Calvin Ryder, who was working at Ministry of Sound for a long time. We met. He ended up sort of hooking up with one of my friends, like the broken up with guy. But me and Calvin stayed friends. And Calvin is one of the most iconic people I've met in my entire life. This funny guy, funny northern guy, hilarious. Ended up working at Ministry of Sound, got me in as September's guitar player for like stuff. Just amazing. So I met a brilliant person from a very traumatic week, or 2 weeks, one holiday, sorry. Yeah, probably that was the last time I've ever done like a gay package holiday. It was wild. Yeah,
probably don't do it again if that's going to happen. Okay, final question. What is and I think this is a difficult one because you've done so much. What's your proudest rainbow-flavoured moment of your life?
Of my life? Oh, God.
You've done so much, but is there one thing that you just think, yeah, if that's going to be my legacy, that moment for me is the moment that I'm most proud of?
Graham Norton with Elton, yes. One of my proudest moments. I don't know, because it's funny, I don't equate that as like a queer moment. I think of that as a career moment, you know? And a lot of my LGBTQ plus wins are wrapped up in my career, so I don't really think of them as that. Oh, maybe, okay, one, doing the music for Mark Gatiss' Queer Talking Heads thing, because that was specifically for that. And I was so proud to have something I composed on the BBC, you know, like where I'm going to use that as just my one, actually, because multiple reasons. Growing up in the 80s and 90s in the UK, you were pretty much told that if you were gay, you would never get a job, you would never get friends and a family, you would never have success, you were relegated to like the scrap pile. And that was like, you've done that to yourself, you fucked up your life, and that is it. So to have a piece of music that I'd composed on the BBC with Mark Gatiss, who has also survived all of that nonsense and that stigma and created that show celebrating sort of like queer empowerment, that was amazing for me. And for like friends and family and everyone else in between to see that was a real like, you were wrong moment, you know? For like the whole nation, like, you were wrong. We did not disappear. And that, I think that was like a real win for everyone involved.
I think that's the perfect moment. Rod Thomas, can I say thank you for joining us today? It's been brilliant to speak to you, and thank you for being so candid and emotional as well. I really appreciate it. And I've got to say, you know, as somebody that loves your music as well and has done for the longest time, I just want to say I think you should be very proud about the joy that you bring to so many people around the world with your music. Even though as an independent artist, you know, I appreciate the struggle to get everything out there and make vinyl and cassettes and videos and all of the things that you do so fabulously well. So know that it is appreciated because your music is fantastic, and I hope you continue to shine brighter and brighter in the years ahead because your music is superb.
Can I also thank you for saying appreciate versus appreciate, because it sounds so much more camp and fabulous, and whenever people pronounce things in certain ways it really tickles me because I'm somebody that works in audio, so that made me feel like we were on a very high-end British television show, and I'm very grateful for that, so thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, and thank you, Rod, for letting us prove today that indeed your life has been a gay old time.
It has, and hopefully will continue to be for some time.
That's it for this episode of A Gay Old Time. Thank you so much for listening in, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Rod. Bright light, as much as I did. Make sure, when you can, you check out the latest album, Enjoy Youth. If you'd like to experience more rainbow joy, then please subscribe and follow this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening right now, maybe on the Gadio app, and do share it with anyone else you think would love to listen in. If you'd like to follow the podcast online, then head to the Instagram account at A Gay Old Time Podcast. And you can also find out more at allthews.nigelmay.net. Thanks as ever to Juliet at Pineapple Audio Production for making everything so sparkly and wonderful. I'll be back soon with another episode featuring a deep and meaningful with another inspirational individual. Until then, from me, Nigel May, sending all the love and hoping that whatever you're up to, if it applies to you, that you're having a gay old time. Enjoy.